Those Zoom meetings must be a bit hard case.
Yeah, they're a bit. They get off the subject a bit. Yeah.
See, I'm not very good with.
I'm not sure what the subject is, but they get off it. Some memories that stick with you a lot. I remember the pre-Olympic tournament when we played Russia and we were on television. I think we went to 3 or 4 overtimes.
Wow. Take off your starters, and again, I remember hearing one of the parents say, no, he wanted to reward the starters by then. And I just thought, I'm not even going to explain to you why I thought that was wrong, but it was just one of those things that you just kind of shake your head at. And I can't
it's not just a basketball thing. It's actually just respecting the game.
Yeah. Sport. There's I haven't even mentioned, the Keith Mair Male Coach of the Year Award. I haven't even spoken about the Hall of Fame, or I haven't mentioned the Order of Merit. There's so many things about you that are just, even though poor old Phil had to sit there and talk to us for about 3 hours on a boat.
He's definitely got nothing else to do.
Oh, wow.
Walks out of his apartment, walks along the waterfront, and spots Phil and Helen at the front of the boat. Shut up. What is it in a phone? Siri or something?
Yes, Siri, yep.
Heard me mention the waterfront, started telling me about Wellington's waterfront.
But it's interesting is I saw that happen once at a South Island tournament. It was actually girls' high, and I came in and we were playing next, and they were up about 100 points, and they were still full court pressing. And so I said to one of the players after, I'm quite good friends with one of the girls because I'm no older brother, and I said to her, "Why would you do that? Why, you guys have clearly won the game. Why would you risk you getting injured or hurt?" Yep, that's the other thing. I don't understand. And so I immediately was like, man, this coach is an idiot. That's the first thing I thought. But she said, no. Well, she said, we decided as a team that if you want to step on the court with us, your life is going to be hell. And she really believed that. And it was just interesting because at the time, I was trying to decide if I was okay with the fact that that group had made that decision. But
I find it hard to actually remember specific years. It all becomes a bit of a blur.
Well,
he mentions a specific event.
I think the problem is you've achieved
those awards events, yeah.
You've achieved too much. That's the problem. Most of us get one or two of those things if we're lucky, and so we can remember it very vividly and very clear. But your list just goes on and on.
Yeah, okay. But the trouble. I said, "What the hell am I going to say to you guys?" I said, "There's only a few seconds to go." I said, "Okay, who's got a 26-point play we can run?" And it turned out. I can tell you a Terry Brunel story, though. He loves this one.
I'd love to hear it.
We did a trip to the States one year. And I think it may have been that year, 89. And with the Rams.
Right.
It wasn't in New Zealand, so we had Kenny Perkins. And I remember we met Kenny Perkins' son, Kendrick. And who's now a bit of a legend with ESPN when they come back on.
That's right, yes.
One of the teams we played was Troy State, and Troy State were following a coaching style, a playing style. And see, my memory's going, it must be, but it was a college in the States where Hank Gathers went to, and he died of arterial fibrillation, he died on the court.
Right.
They would press you at one end, and as soon as they got the ball at the other end, they would just run and shoot.
Right.
And they had a great guard who scored 30 points a game, and Gathers was a fantastic athlete who would get just about every rebound and stick it back in. And they play like this.
Right.
Skelto, up tempo. And Troy State played the same way. So we had this game, and it finished up about 100-98. And the winning basket for them, or one of the winning baskets, whatever, right at the end, in the last minute, right in the last few seconds, was they blew the whistle for goaltending. So it wasn't even a basket. Didn't even goaltending. I thought, I didn't see any goaltending. I didn't see who did what. So I got the referees, and there's more than one. And I said, tell me which player did the goaltending. And they said, number so-and-so. That was Terry Brunel. And I said, well, I think you got your wires crossed. Goaltending. I don't think he's played above the ring for a while.
That's awesome.
Terry remembers that story too.
Terry Brunel with the goaltends. Come on, coach. And thank goodness Phil Burns sort of explained to him that I was trying to document what I was trying to do, and that's when he said, "Okay, well, you need to speak to Keith." So I'm very, very appreciative of your time.
It's all right. I've got plenty of time. Well, I have had. I'm not quite sure what to do with it at the moment, so it's fine.
Oh, well, I really appreciate it. And while looking through, there's a lot to digest there when I go through your 50 years of basketball. It's unbelievable, and from all levels. It's not just coaching high school, coaching NBL, coaching national teams, to being a CEO. It's incredible to see what you've done in your time. Talk about productive.
Well, maybe. So it's fine. You go for your life. I'm actually, I've been emptying out. All my archives were here in Wellington, and I always intended to come back here. I had an apartment here. And for the last few years, I've thought, well, I'm probably never going to make it back to live there, so it's time to quit. And finally, in end of last year, of course, I made the plans, which was bad timing because of this bloody virus.
Yes.
So I've actually just been to my storage unit this morning because I'm meeting with Roger Booth tomorrow, who's written a history of New Zealand basketball.
Oh, excellent. Great.
And he's got boxes and boxes of my stuff that he's been going through, and I've got another box room there. Still stuff to chuck out or get rid of. So, yeah, he's probably another guy, if you ever want some detail, that might be worth talking to, because I can't even remember a lot of the stuff.
I feel like it's important. Like I know that there are a lot of younger people that were really interested to learn about, in Christchurch, for example, Phil talked about Māori High School, and one of my missions at the moment is to get information on that and put something together, because that's unbelievable what a powerhouse that was. And if you ask a typical high school basketball player in Canterbury, they would have no idea, because they haven't been relevant for a long time, and they would not be able to tell you. Phil told me most incredible stories about what high school basketball was like there, and I'm fascinated by that as a high school basketball coach, and some of these programs thinking that they're quite successful, and then you hear about that, it's just like, wow, I really would like to put.
Well, it was a different environment, of course, but the last year or the year, or it must have been the year before last, they were going to celebrate 50 years of high school basketball in New Zealand. I don't really know how that got on, but I remember going to see the very first final in 1968. And in those only a Final Four. And then in 69, that's my first year of coaching. I coached Hutt Valley under 18s. And they met in the final. Hutt Valley Memorial Technical College and Heratonga College met in the final of the secondary schools. They had 7 of the kids that I had in my junior team.
Right. Wow.
But the standard then, compared to the size and the athleticism now.
Yeah.
So you had a great advantage in those days if you got kids properly conditioned and taught the fundamentals pretty well.
Right.
Anyway, yeah, Kerry Williams, well worth trying to get hold of if he's still alive. He should be. He's a fitness guy. He was in New Zealand. He went to Timaru Boys High School. He was in New Zealand cross-country runner, I think, mainly.
Yes, yep, Phil did mention that. Yeah, I saw that. I saw an article when I was researching you, an article with, was it St. Pat's in Timaru? Sorry, it just escaped me. They had a 50-year anniversary and showed a picture of a club that you were associated with in Timaru there. Yeah,
I coached St. Pat's. I think it was 1 year. I might have been 2. I tried to get them to go up, be a bit more ambitious and get out. Timaru was a bit of a backwater.
Yeah.
But it took me a long time to get a Timaru team to Christchurch. And then I found when I got a team to play in Christchurch, they did pretty well, Timaru High School Old Boys. But none of the Christchurch teams would travel down, so it just got too tough. 21 Saturdays in a row sort of thing.
Yeah.
Right back.
Yeah, it's always been the problem there. Just getting that level of competition for them on a consistent basis there.
Yeah.
So there's a lot to digest with your career, but what I was really interested in is talking to you a little bit about your story, but especially the Rams. I think I've got a lot of questions for you around that, and of course seeing some of the photos of some of those players. A lot of them have coached me, Terry Brunel, Bert Knops, and of course I've heard a lot of stories about some of these guys. And I was actually given a gift a while ago for some help I had been putting into the community, and I got given this, and I thought you might recognise this one.
Yeah.
Is it from one of your teams?
Not too sure. I've got all the photos. I rang Caleb Ralph a couple of weeks ago and said that I've got 2 boxes of files,
right,
and stuff, and they're detailed, all the score sheets, stat sheets, everything. I've got all the photos. There's another box with stuff like that.
Oh.
But I've got one of the old Ubix bright red sweatshops there, which I've actually gone out and worn a couple of times during lockdown.
Nice.
I came out here with nothing, but I'm wearing. So this is an old thing when I worked at the Hillary Commission.
Right.
That was also in the store because I came out here with summer clothes.
Right.
It's just starting to get a bit chilly.
Yeah, the temperature's definitely dropped now, hasn't it?
So I'll be getting somebody from Basketball New Zealand to come out and pick those boxes up and send them down to Caleb Harrison in the next couple of weeks.
Oh wow! So I feel like they've hit the jackpot with that box.
Yeah, he said Terry was assembling stuff, so he told me to send it down. I said that either you want it or it goes to the tip. So.
Right. Yeah, I'm sure they'll be very excited about that. So, do you mind if I ask you some questions about the Rams?
No, go for it.
So, Canterbury, we've won 4 championships here, and you coach 3 of those championships was through your coaching. One of those championships meant the most.
They all mean something different. You ever read a book called A Season is a Lifetime by Mike Krzyzewski?
No, I haven't read his book, no.
Yeah, I read it a few years ago. I've given it to Basketball New Zealand because they had a huge library. And I was going to chuck that out too. But it's very hard from one season to another. I think every time you do something for the first time, it probably has a bigger impression.
Yeah.
So therefore, the first year, 1989, I still remember probably better than some of the other years. But then again, the other years, you remember good and bad things too. 1992, a lot of memories there, not all good ones, but that was probably the year that the Kiwi players really dug together and pulled the team through as much as anything. We had a couple of crazy Yanks.
Yeah.
Cool. They were the 2 Ronnies.
Right.
And you need to talk to other people. Probably the one guy who could write a book about them would be Gilbert Anoka, because he used to help us out in those days. He was still a school teacher. He was starting out on his mental coaching stuff. You know, he's been with the All Blacks now for about the last 15 years.
I have met him once. He did a talk at Burnside High School while I was coaching there at the annual sports awards. I believe he was the guest speaker.
Well, if you ever bump into him, ask him about the 2 Ronnies and whether he managed to. I don't know how to even. I don't even know what question to ask him, but that was something else. But no, 1989 was pretty good. It was my first year. The players weren't all young, so I was a bit different to what they were used to.
Right.
And by the end of the season, I mean, Clyde Huntley, when he got the award, made a comment about, we got through the season and we worked it out or something like that. I can't remember. It wasn't totally complimentary about the coach. But no, that was a great season. And then there was, I think the next year was the year that Clyde really couldn't play, and we had to replace him, and we got a very poor replacement, Greg Lockhart. The case of Greg Lockhart was he was a point guard, and the guy running the Rams behind the scenes was a detective sergeant from Rangiora called Russell Henwood.
Right.
Might remember that name. He was also president of the association, I think. And Russ picked him up at the airport, Greg Lockhart, and said, and he was staying at the Russley for a start. Russley gave us really nice accommodation. We went to pick up a car, and then it turned out Lockhart didn't have a license.
Oh.
And the words he used to Russell were, "Oh no, I lost it." And Russell said, "What do you mean you lost it?" Oh, he said, "You know, I was out somewhere and I just lost it."
Right.
So Russell, being a policeman, checked with the American police, found he'd lost it all right. He wasn't a terrible good example, young Greg Lockhart, and he'd lost his license through it being taken off him. I don't know, drink driving, drug driving, whatever.
Oh dear.
But the reason I remember that year so well is his replacement was a guy called Eddie Anderson.
Right.
Who just ignited the team unbelievably. But no, the first one you always remember more. I can say I can remember each of them. The first one for that reason. Second one because the team changed around halfway through the year with Eddie Anderson. And the third one because the Kiwi players really did it. Yeah, sure, the Americans got their 15 or 20 points. But it's how they got them and what they did at practice that was you had to live through. I think every time you go into a game or a tournament, you give yourself a chance of winning. I mean, I can remember playing against Australia, going over there about that same year, 88 or 89, with a team that was like a New Zealand B team because a lot of the top players, quite a few times Kiwi players didn't make themselves available for New Zealand. It was just too tough.
Right.
You assembled for a day or two and you went off and played the world.
Yeah.
And because we didn't have this system we've got now that we've been arguing for since the 50s or 60s, where you can play with Asia.
Yeah.
You had to play Australia every 2 years. It was pretty tough. But even playing them, you tried to come up with a game plan that you thought might make you competitive and you could pull off an upset. You don't go in thinking you're going to lose. So, yeah, at the start of that season, I wasn't thinking of winning, just thinking of we're still in it.
Right.
And you think that from the start to the finish till the day you can't qualify from the playoffs.
Yeah.
And of course, there were 12 teams, I think then. Yeah, 12 teams. The league did go to 13, so you had to make the top 4. So it was a reasonably dramatic season because making the top 4 was tough enough for us.
Absolutely. I saw that on the first one, I think you were the 4th seed.
Yeah.
So you managed to get in there and then took advantage of that opportunity. I was going through, I'm a bit of a stats geek myself. And I was going through the archive and looking at some of the season highlights and season awards. And I noticed that I looked at the All-Star 5s for each of those 3 seasons that the Canterbury won the championships. And I noticed that none of the Canterbury players made the All-Star 5s for that season in the NBL. Do you what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I've never been a great one for MVPs or All-Star 5s or anything like that.
Yeah.
It's just not. I grew up playing rugby and things like that, and you don't have that sort of thing in rugby. Even now, they pick a player of the match, and it's quite nonsensical sometimes.
Yeah.
So it's never worried me too much. I wasn't aware of that till you just said it.
I thought it might have been something that
possibly it shows that the people who pick the All-Star 5s do tend to pick it on statistics.
Yes. Yeah.
And sometimes you see All-Star 5s that aren't even balanced, are they? There'll be 4 guards or 5 big guys or whatever.
Yes. Yeah.
So if you pick it on statistics, there'll always be a couple of Americans with phenomenal scoring averages, that sort of thing. So I can't remember that clearly who was in the All-Star 5 in 1989, for instance. But neither Kenny Perkins nor Clyde Huntley, I doubt if either of them, and I've got it in my storage unit. If we were doing this there, I could look it up.
Yeah.
I doubt that either of them were in the top 10 scorers.
Right. So that sort of represents right there that it's a team. You didn't have a couple of franchise players that you were dependent on. It was a balanced attack.
Yeah, I think I was probably. I can remember going to after match functions and having spectators come up to me and criticizing me for playing certain players.
So you go deep into the bench, is it?
Well, I've always been of the philosophy most of the players don't get paid.
Yeah.
I think we try to give even our bottom players a few dollars, but it would have only been $20, $30 a game or something.
Right. Yeah.
And I always figured it to get them to practice consistently when they're not being paid, and to enjoy practice and to enjoy being part of the team, you had to get them on the court.
Yes.
Plus, you never know during the season who's going to get injured, who's going to get the flu, and who's going to have to fly back to America to see their grandmother or something like that. You know, these things happen. So you also want to give them experience.
Yeah.
But I remember one guy, I know who he was, I won't mention his name, might still be around. And he came up to me after halfway through the season. He said, why is it that whenever we get a decent lead, you put on a whole lot of players that aren't very good and we lose the lead? And I said, well, I don't know, but if you analyze it, you probably also find the reverse. You might actually find when we were behind that sometimes we make some subs and we catch up.
Right.
Your best players don't always win you the game. It's nice to have your best players there at the end. So I said, sometimes they might be coming off because they got 2 or 3 fouls and I want them there at the last 5 minutes. I said, he said, I've never seen it before, but you know. And of course, there were guys like Terry Brunell, who wasn't an all-star player. Every practice, if he was open, he could shoot the 3, and he always. And it's always been my philosophy: try and involve all your players. I can think of some games, though, not Canterbury games, but some games at other levels where I've had to go with my best players all game because the difference between the top and the bottom is too great, and that's not great.
Yeah.
I mean, I had a reunion with 2 of my Hutt Valley players from 1969 the other night. I've met 3 of them. So that's 51 years ago.
Wow.
And we had one guy in that team. There were 9 good players that I could rotate, and one guy wasn't very good.
Right.
And I said to all these guys, he was in the team 3 years. And he wasn't very good. Why was he in the team? And they said, because he came to every practice. So you picked him.
Isn't that like, I mean, as a coach, you just love those guys that, you know, they come to every training, they work hard, you know. Yeah.
Trouble was, there was one game, I still remember 1969, there was one game where we got into foul trouble and nearly lost it because I had to put him on.
Right.
Back to Canterbury. So that first year, I do remember getting criticised for rotating all the players.
That must be pretty satisfying to see that decision as a coach. Not only were you able to include the whole team in those games, but you got the results.
Well, we also had good players. When you go back and look at some of those teams, there were some good players there, and they all chipped in. You know, Ian, you take that team, had John Hill, Dutchy Rademakers, Ian Webb, 1989 team, Ian Webb, Graham Timms was young, the others, you know. I don't think Gilbert Gordon was there that year. He came a year or 2 later. Andy Bennett might have been. I'm not sure whether Andy. No, I don't think Andy was there that year. I think Andy retired the year before. But if you have a look through it, and now in the guard line after Huntley and Rademakers, who else did we have then? I think Terry Brunell was there, wasn't it? 89, pretty sure.
I'll just jump into I've got the team photos here too. Just one moment.
Actually, I've got them on my camera too. Yeah, because I've given them. I'm getting rid of all that stuff. Yeah. Well, we're going to be here for hours if you carry on like this.
Oh, okay. I'll jump back. Yeah, I am notorious. I am notorious for talking for too long once I start talking basketball. So,
oh, here's a Canterbury. Oh no, that's not Canterbury. That's Timaru High School Old Boys. Oh,
I'm jealous of whoever gets to go through your box of goodies there.
yeah.
I've got quite a collection.
Yeah, because then I could talk you through every game.
That would be amazing.
Well, I remember a couple of games. I seriously do. I remember a couple of games where, and I think it was that team, certainly on one occasion it was, where we went down at halftime by 20 odd points. You know, walking across the court to the change room is not great when you're down 20 odd to Saints at halftime or something like that. And there was Saints at one stage. And then the team had come back in the second half and the crowd would get behind them and they were spine tingling. But Cal Stadium, of course, we broke every law under the sun every weekend. I think it's got a capacity of 1,300 now. And it had a capacity then of about 1,600.
Right.
But what I think it was general knowledge, it wasn't public knowledge, but it was general knowledge that we got about 2,000 in there.
Wow.
Probably you might have at times had more than that with all the helpers if you added them in properly. But we get rid of all the 1,600 tickets, and then we actually got them. You know, it's all scaffolding was put up. The fire brigade used to come in on a Saturday morning and put in all the scaffolding.
Right.
So where there were aisles for people to walk up to their seats, on the night when the stadium was basically full, there'd be a queue outside, and we would sell tickets to the aisles. The aisles disappeared.
Right.
If you ever look at old photos, you won't see any aisles up.
I see.
Those stands.
Well, that's
the other thing you'll see is around the court where all the signage is. You'll see lots of kids sitting around. We used to give away kids tickets. And of course, then we added the little stand at the end, which became the student stand where Gilbert Gordon's fan following all went. And he had his own fan club, the Air Gordon Club.
Oh, wow. Air Gordon. Nice.
Well, Gilbert can't jump.
Right.
If you see him dunk, it's probably a low ring, but tall. The university students got behind him and formed the Air Gordon Club.
Oh, that's a great. I could just imagine the T-shirts they could make.
Yeah, they made T-shirts. They were great. Oh. I'm pretty sure I haven't got one in my storage unit. I'm pretty sure that's one of the things I haven't got.
Wow.
Which is tragic, really.
Well, that's incredible because I started going along to the Rams games a little bit past that. So unfortunately, I missed those championship seasons. I started going to the Rams games just after that because that's how old I was when I sort of got into basketball. I was sort of around 12. But I just remember when you got 1,300, 1,400 people into Cal Stadium, what the atmosphere is like. It's just electric. So
we got 2,000.
Exactly. So I'm jealous that I didn't get to experience that atmosphere because it must have been something else.
I remember two games against very good teams. One was Auckland and one was Saints when we were down 20 plus at halftime. Yes, but not. And then the second half, we had no option. It was, well, I think were the games 4 quarters or 20 minutes each way. Oh, sure. Can't even remember that. But I'm sure they were 20 minutes each way because I don't remember the other team having a time to have a decent break in the second half.
Right.
We'd come out in the start of the second half and press. And because I used 10 or 12 players, I would rotate everybody in and they would be all full of energy right to the end and they would just wear them down and the crowd would just go berserk. It was fantastic.
Well, that's what I was when you were talking about going deep into your bench like that. I'm thinking at the end of that fourth quarter or second half, the leagues of, if you're using your bench and everybody's You know, those stronger, you know, your starters, if they're playing less minutes, then when they're out on the court, they're going to have, you know, that much more energy.
Well, if you're coming off the bench and you know you're only going to get 2 or 3 minutes and you've got to press the daylights out of the other team, yeah.
And if you've got 2,000 people there, then I'm sure that defensive intensity is going to step up a notch or two.
And the thing that got me about Canterbury is that, which was great, the players had such character. They used to practice like that.
Right.
And the late Graham Nuttridge, who was our physio, used to say, "What do you do at practice?" Because I get more people coming in for physio after practice than I do after a game. I said, they just practice like they play.
Yeah.
I said, the difference is they practice for an hour, you know, at that tempo for quite well over an hour, off and on. And all of them play. You're not subbed. Not like a game where you might only get 3 or 4 minutes. And so we had more injuries in practice than we did in games.
Wow. I love that. I love that. That's,
well, I didn't like it much, but
when I was starting to sort of, I did get to see some of the Canterbury Rams trainings the year that they had Craig Ferrant and Andrew Gardner. So this is a bit later on. And I remember Carlos Ferruccio and some of these guys and the trainings. I remember the first training I got to go watch because I was an up and coming player, and they got me to come along to watch some trainings to sort of mentally prepare me. And my first training, players were holding each other back from these fights, and I was thinking I might go spend another year or two toughening up a little bit before I can train with an NBL squad. But now that I'm a bit older and I reflect back, I mean, that's if your trainings are tougher than your games, then wow, that's preparing a team.
I think there was a bit of ego, but no, we didn't have any fights or something. But if there was a disagreement, I didn't go in and try and break it up and sort it out and then go. Nothing. It was very rare.
Can I so Bert Knops is an idol of mine because I went to Kaiapoi High School and I was pretty average at basketball, but I loved it. And then I went to Bert Knops's basketball academy, and through that, it kind of gave me the foundation of being able to improve later on. And so Bert Knops here, if someone mentions his name on Facebook or anything like that, all the comments are just going to blow up because people just respect him so much. And, you know, he's sort of under the radar. You don't see him, talking on social media or any of those things. So he's a bit of a legend here. Can I ask you about Bert and when you first met him and what kind of...
First time I met Bert, I think he was playing for Otago University as a player.
Right.
Otago. I think Andy Bennett may have been at Otago University. And I was in Timaru. And we used to run these tournaments. They'd come up. So it was the first time I saw them.
Right.
And they were quite hard case because Andy Bennett in particular, I think he was married with kids. Because in between games, they'd sit up in the stand, you know. They were real in those days, basketball players were, I mean, I think a lot of the old basketball players loved the idea of the NBL this year, making up new rules to play because that's what the game was like, to fit into whatever time you had as an amateur and everything else. But that's the first time I saw Bert. Then he started playing for Canterbury, and then he got in the New Zealand team. But I never really got to know him as a friend until basically I was appointed Canterbury coach.
Right.
And I can't 100% remember whether I approached him or how it happened. But he was an automatic choice. He'd retired and he was a coach. Oh, I would have met him at Aranui High School. That's right. I would have been coaching Timaru Boys High and he would have been coaching Aranui High School.
Right.
Run across him plenty of times as coaches, even though he was still playing for Canterbury.
Okay.
And so, yeah, I know him pretty well through all that. So when we started off together, and I knew he was like me, he was fundamentals, you know, learn to play the game.
Took a wee bit of a break from basketball and realised how badly I enjoyed coaching high school basketball. So,
believe me, I often regret ever leaving it. Yeah, it's good fun. You get different crop of kids every year, and yet you can build them up from the third form. St Thomas's, I mean, the environment's changed in New Zealand. Once upon a time, schools like St Thomas's, even St Bede's, till Terry Brunel and a few others came along, they weren't too worried about basketball. So how are you getting on with that environment? Have they changed over the years?
Yeah, I think you can see it sort of change. It's St Thomas is definitely a rugby school for sure. I think they're kind of at the point now where they just understand with the numbers that it's undeniable basketball is a the sport. Well, biased opinion here.
Yeah. Is it a boy? Is it just a boys' school, St Thomas's?
It is. Yes. Yeah. So yeah, they had it was just perfect timing. I thought I was going to be too busy to coach this year, and I had some time free up. And when they offered that to me, that's when I realised, wow, this, that light bulb went off where I said, this is actually really what I want to do, is spend my next 30 years.
No, I'll tell you what, 30 teams, you must have 3 or 4 of them that want to play.
The enthusiasm, the enthusiasm is there, and that's the first thing I look for is that training, how hard they were.
Yeah.
How hard they were playing and how hungry they were to get better. And once I saw that, I thought, okay, that's a group that I can work with.
Yeah, no, that sounds great. I envy you. It's a bad thing. It might have been nice to see Finn Delaney go and play for Nelson, because he's pretty young and fit.
Yeah.
But instead of putting that on TV as a negative, this isn't going to be much of a league because these players aren't playing. Most people my age anyway, most of my friends, they just can't wait. They want to see.
Yeah.
New Zealand's got so much talent coming up through the schools these days.
Yes.
We actually want to see that. We want to see it playing.
Mm.
And we're not worried about Tom Abercrombie or Mika Vakona. I mean, they're legends. You see them at the top level, you know what they can do.
Yeah.
To the next level.
Yeah, it's as a high school coach, I'm just excited about being able to walk back into the gym and see the students back. I know my group's itching to get going, and it'll just be nice to see all the basketball community again. So
I often sit there with a guy, a legend in the UK in Manchester, Jeff Jones. He's an American,
right?
He coaches, and his sons and his daughter, or his daughter's still on the British team, and all this sort of thing. And we'll sit there, and he knows all the players.
Mm-hmm.
I don't live in the middle of Manchester or anything. And the number of times he says, "Oh, yeah, great player, he can shoot, he can do this, but can't play."
Right. Is it high school basketball? Is it where it's some of these players not sort of being able to go through the right systems or environments, or?
Well, we are very fortunate. When I was at England basketball 10 or so years ago, we got added to a thing called it was called ACE in those days, Advanced Certificate. I'm not very good with acronyms, but it was public government funding you could put into a school to set up a basketball academy.
Okay, nice.
And that's changed things. We now get coaches who are full-time professional of your age, younger, and they can get the best players from their area in. And so you're seeing quite a difference.
Oh,
it's
great.
Exposure to 3-4 times a week fundamental practices that changes people.
Yes. Yeah.
So the pool of fundamentally sound players is growing. The only thing they haven't got in Britain is a decent pool of coaches that can actually get through to the British kids.
Right.
And turn them into a unit. I mean, you get a bunch of Kiwis that want to play for New Zealand, and that's it.
Yeah.
That needs to change. But yeah, so yeah, Bert and I maybe we're too similar in a way. I don't know.
Right.
But I've seen him a couple of times lately.
Oh yeah. Oh great.
Yeah, because the Going Nowhere Club, the over 40 group that play once a week.
Yes. Yeah.
When they couldn't play, they started up Zoom meetings.
What a great name. I love that.
And when I suddenly popped up, and Phil's in Gibraltar and I'm sitting in Wellington.
Yeah.
They said, "Oh, we'll get Bert Knox and all belong." So next minute they came along. Bert, I think, he attended too, but he's a deputy principal at
Ellesmere.
Is it Ellesmere or Lincoln?
Ellesmere, I believe.
Yeah. So his commitments, and then he missed the last couple of meetings, and of course they've started playing again now. So
right, those Zoom meetings must be a bit hard case.
Yeah, they're a bit. They get off the subject a bit. Yeah.
See, I'm not very good with.
I'm not sure what the subject is, but they get off.
I never used Zoom or anything like that prior to the lockdown. I'm not a great technology guy, and
I've never had a one-on-one on Zoom before. No, I've always sat there as one of the pictures.
Oh, well, this is all new to me as well. So it's been fantastic because I'm out in Rollaston, so I'm kind of isolated to all, the people that I know through the basketball community. And what a great excuse! Not only am I able to meet some great basketball people like yourself, but just getting to talk basketball. And I've got a lot of friends now that are based in the US and all over the show, UAE, Australia. So I've been able to catch up with a lot of these people. And so I kind of combined this kind of, I guess, yeah. I got to have Terry coach me for a season as well. I had those three coaches all sort of year after year after year, and so it was good getting to see different coaches and styles and things. But so how do you where did you and Phil Burns cross paths? Where did that start? Was that with the Canterbury Rams?
I'd like to say I remembered him when he was at Mair High School, but I don't.
Right.
Although I believe he was in one of the teams when in the final. It might have been the one in Nelson about 1977, 78 or 78.
Right.
No, I really got to know Phil when he started to come along with the Going Nowhere boys.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to connect the dots here, just out of curiosity.
I knew him before then.
Right.
But not closely. He was a market gardener in those days.
Mm-hmm.
But he was also coaching at, or did he come along after me at Christchurch Girls? Oh no, he came after me at Christchurch Girls High School, I think. He was coaching out at Rangiora, so I might have bumped into him there too.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you bump into most coaches, and he was in that area. Phil Burns. There was Phil Whiteside from out near Hornby. Yeah, the ones that are genuine coaches, there is a difference. You often get teachers coaching high school teams or a parent or something like this.
Yes.
The genuine coaches would be Terry at St. Bede's and Bert at Aranui and Phil wherever.
Yeah.
And prior to that, Kerry Williams at Mair Howe. And then you get a whole stream of people that come in for a couple of years. But
yes.
There are a lot of negatives about coaching. So
yeah,
and a lot of people come and coach when their kids are involved, just to help.
Yes. So I just had a chat. I just met for the first time Adrian Boyd. A couple of weeks ago, and I mentioned to him that I was going to talk to you, and his face lit up, and he said that I had to say hello to you and to tell you that you're the best.
What was his name? Showboat Boyd, was it? He had a nickname. Showtime might have been, yeah. I liked it. Yeah, he was good. Remember him playing for Auckland?
Yeah.
Adrian Boyd.
Yes, that's the one. So he's got his basketball academy called Boyd Ballers.
Oh, is that right? He's still involved in like that.
He's in the USA.
In Wellington.
Yes, so they're still working together. But Adrian's in Orlando in the US at the moment with his children who are in high school. So yeah, I got to meet him for the first time on one of these chats and talk about high school basketball and things like that. It was a great chat. It was great to meet him. But
yeah.
Every time I've got to mention a few people this week that I was chatting to you, just had to drop your name into conversations and see people's face and do the okay. Like impressed, what have you been finding that you've been doing with your time?
Well, basically, I've been tidying up my affairs here to a large extent, and I've got family in Australia, so I'm on what is it, house party, WhatsApp, that sort of stuff with granddaughters and things.
Oh, great! Yeah,
I ring back to the UK. That's an hour a day. The time just sort of goes. Lockdown was good. I seemed to do a lot more, and I was watching Michael. I haven't finished watching The Last Dance yet.
Oh, I think it's one thing that I've noticed through this process is people. I had Mark Dickel on here, and I was talking to him about the year that he was playing for UNLV, and he led America. He led in assists, led the country. And I was asking him these questions, and I said to him, when you were here in Canterbury, did people ask you questions about this? And I was kind of shocked that he said nobody ever asked him about what it was like playing in Europe, what it was like playing in college. And I find it interesting that I found that just from asking people, look, I'd really love to, to talk basketball with you. It's been amazing how open people have been with that. But I've also noticed that, I don't know, I'm not quite sure what it is, but people don't tend to ask questions, or I'm not sure what that is exactly, but.
Yeah, it's pretty normal. I find it incredible that I've lived in England, Britain, Wales for so long. I've never been asked to do any coaching.
Mm-hmm.
I was asked to go to Birmingham once and do a session. I went to some school north of Sheffield once, did a session. That's about it. I live in a place called Wrexham in North Wales, and there's other people in North Wales. And as soon as I went there, I gave them a card and said, I'm living here now if you ever want me. There's only one basketball club, hardly any sport.
Right.
Inter-school sports played. And nobody does anything, I'm the chairman of Basketball Wales. I was supposed to coach the Welsh team one year, and then I got ill.
Right.
People don't, in Mark Dickel's case, people know Mark Dickel, yeah. They'll know him more from being Otago in New Zealand,
yeah,
than they will about him at college at UNLV.
That's true.
People won't even know that I think he had the full 4 years there.
That's right, yeah.
And prior to that, he went to Australia. He played under Brian Goorjian.
Yeah.
Goorjian family's pretty heavy, and they got him into UNLV. He's played professionally, internationally. It's probably difficult to get somebody like that in the right environment. But if you don't know something about that person, and I think that's a good interviewer. I think that, like when you watch people interview other people on television, there's nothing worse than an interviewer who's just going around the edges because they don't really know what that person's done.
Yeah.
And some of the old interviewers, used to be on the telly. We used to see Michael Parkinson in Britain every week. He could go and interview Jeffrey Boycott, the cricketer, or a rugby player, or a singer or something, but he would have done his research beforehand.
Yes, yes.
And they would find little things out about that person, and they would be able to say, why? Why did you do that?
That's exactly right, yes. So, because I guess my whole purpose for this is learning more and trying to document. So I'm quite interested in asking those questions because in your case, like, there's I haven't even mentioned, the Keith Mair Male Coach of the Year Award. I haven't even spoken about the Hall of Fame, or I haven't mentioned the Order of Merit. There's so many things about you that it just opens me up to want to ask, 10 questions on each thing, but just being mindful that I might have 30 minutes, an hour, whatever it may be, even though poor old Phil had to sit there and talk to us for about 3 hours on a boat.
He's definitely got nothing else to do.
So,
are they still in a state of lockdown? Spain's lifted it, so Gibraltar must be it. Oh yeah, the Mayor of Gibraltar came out of his place, yeah, because I know the Mayor of Gibraltar.
Oh wow.
He's the chairman of the local basketball association.
Oh, okay.
And he's also on FIBA. He's the vice president of FIBA Europe. So.
Oh wow.
Walks out of his apartment, walks along the waterfront, and spots Phil and Helen at the front of the boat. Shut up. What is it in a phone? Siri or something?
Yes, Siri, yep.
Heard me mention the waterfront, started telling me about Wellington's waterfront. And so when the lockdown was lifted in Spain, he as the Mayor of Gibraltar, he'd been too scared to go out because he'd be seen. He had to set an example.
Right.
And he and his wife go walking, and they see Phil, who'd been there a couple of years ago and had gone to the basketball stadium and met him. So,
right.
And Phil's got plenty of time. He's not going anywhere.
I just couldn't believe when I reached out to him and he said, "Oh, I'm currently in Europe." And I thought, okay, well, now's not a great time to ask him for a Zoom chat. And, just the fact that his face popped up and he's on a boat somewhere in Europe and, he's talking to me and two other of his, students from the SIT days. It was amazing, just to see, one of them in Australia and another one, here in the lockdown. And it's just been such a great way to connect with people. And
they had an Australian coach last year. Is he still coaching this year?
Oh, who's it? Sorry?
They had an Australian coach last year, didn't they?
Yes, yep. So he's coaching again this year. Yep.
Right.
Mick
Okay.
Downer.
Right. Well, with any luck, I might get to Auckland and see a few games. I'm hoping to. Anyway.
Yeah, it sounds really, really interesting. I like you said, they're just being resourceful and working with what they have rather than focusing on what they can't do, focusing on what they can do.
And they weren't to know either that really this the progress New Zealand's made. I mean, you go out into Wellington now, and the students are all back, and until you go into a bar or cafe, which are still following social distancing and very strict. If you just walk around the street, it's wall-to-wall people. So.
Yeah.
It's too relaxed, if it should take off again. But anyway, if they'd known that, they might have formed the league in a different way with home and away, because you can fly again now. But nobody knew it was going to get to this stage this quickly. So.
Yeah, it must be. So I'll just jump to this other list that I have here. I just wanted to ask you about this. Before I even got a chance to meet you, I was so happy for you that this Keith Mair Coach Award at BBNZ, and I saw Matt Lacey, one of the recipients of that award, and such an awesome up-and-coming coach. And it's great to see that they put that in there. Like, I'm all about legacy and all about, again, another way people are going to be able to connect back to you and your coaching and what you've done. Just that award in itself and connecting these younger coaches to your name. When did you find out that this award was coming about?
I really don't know. The awards thing, I think it'd be in the last 10 years, wouldn't it? I'm not sure how far back they go, because the awards working with Basketball New Zealand was sort of triggered by the New Zealand Basketball Foundation.
Right.
And I remember years ago when I was part of the foundation, before going overseas, that one of the things, we couldn't find a role for a start. And then we thought, well, there's no archives. We need to do archives. And subsequent to that, they found that handling an annual awards function would be good. So I think it started off, they started making these awards without a function, and now they have a function.
Right.
They do it, or they might have done it at the AGM prior to that. But I can't tell you when they started or anything without going back. People keep asking me questions about the past, and it's not that I got a bad memory. It's just that I find it hard to actually remember specific years. It all becomes a bit of a blur.
Well,
he mentions a specific event.
I think the problem is you've achieved
those awards events. Yeah,
you've achieved too much. That's the problem. Most of us get one or two of those things if we're lucky, and so we can remember it very vividly and very clear. But your list just goes on and on. Yeah,
but the trouble is, it's all done as a hobby. So my main part in life was, I had a wife and 2 kids and jobs, and you lived here and you lived there. And somewhere basketball's come along, dragged along in the cart behind. So it's like in the 80s with the New Zealand team. I was looking at some photos today and I thought, is this China or is it Japan? I can remember. And I tried to look through the handbooks and I'm pretty sure it was 1994. And the one annual report I was missing from Basketball New Zealand, which I'm checking out too, was 1994. So I'm seeing Roger Booth tomorrow and I'll give him the photos. And so you go and work out which year it was.
Yeah. I have to ask every basketball coach this one question. You don't have to answer it if you don't want to. But what were your pet peeves as a basketball coach?
don't know, you might have to ask Bert Knopps. Probably one of my pet phrases before a game, during a game, after a game, whatever, is when you're coaching, when you're playing, is to take care of the little things. And the little things in basketball are things like making sure that you don't just stand around waiting for the ball. You go and you move into space and you keep the court balanced, that sort of thing. And the little things like rebounding, do it once and then forget the next time. It's just they become automatic.
Yes.
I guess the other little things are turning up to practice on time and everything just being on time.
Yeah.
So I never really liked being held up, you know. Certainly I always believed in starting practice on time. And if you had a pre-game meeting or something like that, then yeah, I suppose just being on time might be the only little thing I can think of that bugs me.
Yeah.
But Bert will probably tell you there's 300 more.
Sometimes when I ask somebody what their pet peeve is, sometimes they kind of, I don't know if it's because they don't want to be too honest, you know, they're a bit aloof. And then other times they go, well, where should I start? I just find it, you know what my pet peeve is I had a final, I played in a final a couple of years ago, and I didn't have my two best players. I had two junior Tall Blacks on my team, and neither one of them played in this game. And this is at Cal Stadium, and the other team had clearly won, so we'd lost the game. And the coach called a timeout with, I think, 10 seconds to go, even though they clearly won the game, and drew up a play for one of their players to get a three-point attempt. And I remember when he called that timeout, I remember just standing there, and by looking at me, you wouldn't have been able to see, you know, my rage. But I remember just thinking, that is my pet peeve in basketball. Like,
yeah, you prick. Yeah. Oh, don't worry. Those things are. It's not a pet peeve, but they're irritating. When I'm watching a game, I often watch the coaches. And I watch that sort of behaviour.
Yeah.
And I've seen lots of things like that overseas that are the same here, and coaches that do that, and I've never understood it.
Yeah.
And I notice a lot in college basketball, to a lesser extent, even the NBA, is they don't play right to the finish.
Right.
And if they play right to the finish, the other coach takes it, they're rubbing it in, you know. So obviously a lot of people don't like it. But no, calling a timeout right near the end of a game.
It's almost like...
You want another question to ask, Bert? We were playing Adelaide one year, because we'd won the New Zealand title, and they used to have the top team, the team that won the Australian NBL will play the winner of the New Zealand NBL.
Oh, wow, awesome.
More than one game, or a tournament. It might be even a tournament. The Adelaide, the 36ers, whatever they are, pretty damn good, and they're a big stadium with 8,000. They didn't have 8,000 that day. It was only about half full. But it was on television. And by the fourth quarter, because there were 4 12-minute quarters in those days, we were pretty knackered, and we were down about 20, and the game was all over. And all of a sudden, a timeout was called. And I'm sitting there with Bert next to me, and we're all set to go and have a beer. Suddenly we got a timeout. Oh, yeah, hell. And this is your pet peeve, you see. And I thought it was the other coach had called the timeout.
Right.
No, one of our players had called the timeout.
Okay.
I said, what the hell am I going to say to you guys? I said, there's only a few seconds to go. I said, okay, who's got a 26-point play we can run? And it turned out that they called the timeout just to see what it was like to call a timeout on the court, because they'd never done it before. They'd seen it on TV with the American college system. That's it.
Oh, man. Oh. That's what a great concept, having the top Australian team play the top New Zealand team.
Yeah. It's not great, though, when you call a timeout and you're on television and you're looking around. Who called that?
You were either talking non-stop during that timeout or not talking at all.
Well, I couldn't think of a 26-point play. And Bert wasn't much use.
Yeah.
remember looking at each other, what the hell is that? Yeah. No, that's a legitimate peeve. But there's a lot of things like that in basketball. You see, particularly at junior level, and you'll see it at high school level.
Yeah.
And we've mentioned a few people tonight that I've seen do things that I don't think they should. And the worst one, though, is one of the ones that I see a lot and read about a lot is when a team comes out and presses another team right from the start, and they're clearly a superior team.
Yeah. Yes.
I have never ever seen the point in that why they do it.
It's interesting that you say that
to humiliate the other coach or the other team.
Exactly, and it's you're probably going to have a bunch of those kids on the losing team go away not wanting to play basketball anymore. But it's interesting is I saw that happen once at a South Island tournament, and it was actually girls' high. And I came in and we were playing next, and they were up about 100 points, and they were still full court pressing. And so I said to one of the players after, I'm quite good friends with one of the girls because I'm no older brother, and I said to her, "Why would you do that? Why you guys have clearly won the game? Why would you risk you getting injured or hurt?"
Yep, that's the other thing.
Like, I don't understand. And so I immediately was like, man, this coach is an idiot. That's the first thing I thought. But she said, no. Well, she said, we decided as a team that if you want to step on the court with us, your life is going to be hell. And she really believed that. And it was just interesting because at the time, I was trying to decide if I was okay with the fact that group had made that decision. But yeah, that's another thing too. Is that team that leaves that guy out on the court for too long when you just don't need to.
No, I've read where coaches have said the same thing. He doesn't want his players to ever go out there and not play hard. So, and I just think, well, you're missing the point because they can play hard, but don't press. Make them play hard with different rules.
Yeah.
I've done that where you can only defend inside the 3-point circle, and where every time you get the ball, you've got to pass it 5 times before you shoot it, or you run your bench.
Yeah,
your bottom 5 players.
Absolutely.
When I first went to England and we shifted offices, and we actually worked in a building, the English Institute of Sport had lots of basketball courts. So we ran lots of our competitions through the regular weekly ones. So most Saturdays I could go in and watch a bit of basketball, go into the office and make a cup of tea or coffee and then go back. There was no spectators. It was all junior stuff.
Right.
And occasionally I would see that. I would see a team at halftime. And the other thing I saw was, some of the staff around the building would tell me, oh, yes, I saw that. And the kids were in tears at halftime and so on. And often I would go back just to watch the start of the second half to see if the winning team made any adjustments.
Yeah.
I never did. They'd start the second half with their top 5 and pressing. And I guess, that I think that's probably a bigger peeve than most things, yeah. In the development of basketball, I mean.
It's almost like an unwritten law. Like some things you just can't teach. Like it's just an understanding about some of those things. I've been.
You actually have some control over that as the coach. Now, if you're a team and your team's out there, you don't have much control. You can't suddenly sub all your bottom players. You can't. But as a basketball coach, you have some control.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember. I think my first junior team that I ever took to the South Island tournament, we played an Ashburton team. And we were very, very proud of our group for making the final. Like it was an unbelievable result for us to make that final. And I remember the other team, he continued to, full court pressure. And he actually talked a little bit of trash to me during the game, and I just decided to ignore it. But I just remember thinking to myself, I've never done this before, but I'm unable to shake this man's hand after the game. But I know that's a little, that was the only way I could respond to that. But I remember being frustrated because I remember subbing, I think 2 minutes to go, I put my bench on the court and my starters couldn't get the ball over halfway. So when I put my bench out on the court, after about 30 seconds, I looked at him and that's when he started talking to me. But I remember just looking at him take off your starters. And again, I remember hearing one of the parents say, no, he wanted to reward the starters by then. And I just thought, I'm not even going to explain to you why I thought that was wrong, but it was just one of those things that you just kind of shake your head at. And I can't
It's not just a basketball thing. It's actually just respecting the game.
Yeah.
respecting sport, the whole purpose of sport.
Yes.
And the whole purpose of sport diminishes at times with professional sport, but it is about having fun. And I'm sure that's why the Going Nowhere groups do so well.
Yes.
This basketball to start in Wellington last week was the Going Nowhere group here.
Yeah.
And they had 2 courts, they had 10 on each court, social distancing, you know. Christchurch guys managed to get a gym at Papanui, or a council gym or something like that.
Oh, great.
What's the big thing is the social aspect afterwards. So they booked a restaurant and managed to get their beers in as well.
Oh, there you go. Nicely done. I just going off the cuff here. Is it? I mean, it's unbelievable to ask somebody that's coached at that level for 12 years specifics. But is there speaking of highs and lows, was there like a time that stands out to you over that 12 years as the most memorable, or that now when you reflect, it stands out for one reason or another?
There's some memories that stick with you a lot. I remember the pre-Olympic tournament when we played Russia and we were on television. I think we went to 3 or 4 overtimes.
Wow.
And we didn't have our full squad. And that was in Sydney. That was pretty memorable. We lost in the end. But that was pretty memorable. Actually, another memorable time we had Mark Dickel in the team was the World under 23 champs.
Right.
We could have beaten Yugoslavia.
Wow.
We were actually up by 2. They scored. They were awarded 2 free throws, and we had the ball with 8 seconds to go. And what happened then was quite tragic. So those are 2 losses, but they were like wins because they were so fantastic. Beating Canada a couple of times. I remember one game in Wellington was unbelievable because they had Todd McCulloch and players like that.
Oh, yes, yes.
But we've actually beat them twice. We beat them 2 separate years. Trips to China, Japan. I remember a test series in Japan was very fierce. We had played 6 tests. It was 2-2 after 4.
Oh, wow.
I don't normally complain about the refs, so this isn't a complaint. But we hadn't had any FIBA refs in the first 4 games.
Okay.
Japanese FIBA refs, I mean.
Right.
We didn't have neutrals or anything. It was a test series. But for the last 2 games, we had their best referees who were FIBA refs. My manager was Robert Milligan, who was a FIBA ref.
Right.
And Robin said to me, he said, "Oh, you'll be all right this game. You've got a FIBA ref." And we won both the last 2 games not by a huge margin, but that was a fantastic series. And I remember after that, I've got a photo somewhere, the Kiwi boys led by Glenn Denham and Byron Vaitoe, Pero was in the background, were doing a haka with the Japanese team, teaching them how to do it.
Nice.
But they got very good, yeah. It's amazing what you can do over a few beers.
Oh.
And there are other wins. I remember our first win over a Division 1 college in America.
Well, firstly, what was, because I read that there's quite a few games played in a couple of stretches. Mark mentioned at one point, I can't remember how many games he said they played, but what was is that a preparation tournament or is it an actual tournament or what is that?
No, I mean, Phil said to you there are different eras of basketball. If you go through the 1980s, basketball, like the National League, was exploding, but it was exploding with the influence of sort of 2 really good Americans in every team dominating the games. The New Zealand team at that stage, very low profile. If we played a college team in New Zealand, the scores were not flattering to New Zealand because you'd assemble and then play.
Yes.
And the New Zealand team picked quite a good team to go to the United States in 1984. And although we won 5 games and lost 5, we didn't beat a Division 1 team.
Right.
And that became a bit of a pattern. But those trips were designed to develop the game. They were designed to develop players.
Okay. Right.
So the players paid their own way to some extent, and the other teams pay you some money. And generally, they're done on the cheap by Basketball New Zealand. Didn't cost anything.
Right.
But those guys, was it Mark telling you? Yeah, you tended to be there for the best part of 2 weeks, and you'd play 10 or 11 games.
Right. Wow.
Tough. Yeah, and you're driving cross country. You can drive quite long distances between games.
Mm.
I mean, by the end of the tour, everybody's knackered.
Yeah, for sure.
Mind you asked me some other highlights. We did a trip to Europe, 97, 98. That was fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. Because we played something like 13 games in 15 days.
Wow.
And don't ask me how it happened, but we played in the Harlem tournament, which is a pretty tough tournament. I think Australia's won it once. I don't even know if it happens anymore because those sort of tournaments with all the international basketball and professional basketball have dropped. But we actually made the final of that tournament. And I don't know how it happened, but we played Brazil in the final. We'd already played twice on tour. We played on Christmas Day in Madrid against the full-strength Italian team.
Right.
And that's a funny day of the week to play. Didn't have many spectators. But at that particular tournament, something happened. It must have been a team or two not quite, but the two sections weren't even. So we had something like 7 teams in our section, and Brazil only had 4 or 5 in theirs.
Right.
So we put them in the final. We did have to win a semi. It was about our 7th game in 7 or 8 days. It was about their 4th or 5th in 7 or 8 days.
It's a huge difference.
And we'd won 2 or 3 games by 1 point. So, but I mean that was a tour that proved that Pero Cameron, Phil Jones, Ralph Lattimore, they were all genuinely showed themselves to be international class. It wasn't a team that had Kirk Penny was before Kirk Penny's time. Didn't have Mark Dickel. Didn't have Sean Marks. He didn't play really till the Olympics. So yeah, it was a full strength team as far as Glenn Denham. Glenn Denham cracked his ribs in the first game.
Oh, elbow?
I don't know, but it was a rough game. We had a 49-hour trip to get there because flights were delayed. We sat at Heathrow Airport for half a day because there was snow and ice. So the first game we were pretty badly jet lagged, but that was a fantastic tour, and those guys were, the guy to talk to about that's Glenn Denham. And funnily enough, I didn't have an assistant coach, so it was just me. The late Robin Milligan was the manager, and the late Graham, I mentioned his name earlier, Nuttridge. Graham Nuttridge was the physio.
Right.
And Nutters was knackered because he was up all hours, times of the day and night, massaging people and getting them ready to play.
That's the first thing I'm thinking is what the leagues must have felt like it playing. It's difficult to play in a tournament, but let alone having to travel. That really testing the legs from game 4 onwards.
Well, he set the goal of getting every player on court for every game. So after Glenn Denham cracked his ribs, which is an incredibly painful thing.
Yes.
He said it was more painful than breaking your ribs at every game. And so did everybody else. And I'm pretty sure everybody played at least a couple of minutes in every game. We rotated the 12 players.
Yeah.
And every player had to pay to go on the trip, $1,500 or something like that.
Wow.
That would definitely be a highlight, yeah.
That's as somebody that's starting to record and film things, that would have been an incredible tournament to just have a camera and follow your group around for that trip.
Well, it was. Well, we played 3 games in Portugal, then we played 3 games in Madrid, and then we played about 7 in the Netherlands at the Harlem tournament. So it's about 13 games. But I remember we came off one game, we'd won by 1 point or something. I think I walked past the commissioner or whoever it was on the score table, and he said, "Well played, coach, well done." I said, "Yeah, a bit of a miracle, wasn't it? We've beaten some Italian team and pro team." And how we did it, I don't know, but the boys played brilliantly. And anyway, we came back the next night and won by 1 point. He said, another miracle? I think we did it 3 or 4 times, very close games. And he said that every night. Yeah. But probably, if I went through the files, as I say, you pick up a score sheet, it would all come back.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Like, it's funny you mention that. I've just over the lockdown tidied up my garage, and my first year coaching, I think I kind of knew the roster a little bit, but score sheets. I found some score sheets, and I was going through them, and this miraculously, all of a sudden, I could picture the gym. I could picture details about that game that I wouldn't have, you
need a trigger point, definitely.
Yes.
I get people emailing me where I'm living, and they'll say, do you remember so-and-so? And sometimes I can't even remember the player, but as soon as I see the score sheet and the thing, oh, yeah, I remember exactly this, that, and the other.
Yeah, it's incredible the details that you still remember as well, the details that come back.
Yeah. Well, as I say, I've been out with 3 of the Hope Valley kids from the under-18 team of 69, only 10 in the team.
Right.
And because I handed them all my photos, and I also had all the stat sheets and score sheets, things like that. We were saying, and they were saying, the first Final Four tournament they went to, the local paper, which was in Dunedin, wrote about the other 3 teams. And right at the end of the article, it said, and the 4th team's Hutt Valley. Like, they're here. And then when we played Otago in the final, it was like, well, all about Otago. And their opponents are Hutt Valley, who've somehow got here, And I said, yeah, I remember all that. I said, but how the hell did we get to that tournament? Because Hutt Valley never went to any tournaments because you had to beat Wellington. It was like getting past Australia to get to the World Championship, the Olympics.
Yeah.
So we opened up the file. We didn't spend the night opening up the file. It was the only time we did. And we had a look. Hello, we beat Wellington 77-44. Oh, and look at who Wellington had in their team. They had 3 New Zealand reps. Went on to play for the Cuba.
Wow.
And suddenly you just think that, but I hadn't remembered any of that.
Mm.
It's just.
How did you go about when they select somebody for the New Zealand? When they selected you, I saw that you had spent some time as the assistant coach for the New Zealand men's team. So when it came, is that right? Was it 4 years prior?
Yeah, all these things happen by accident. There's no great. I mean, I had no desire to be an assistant coach.
Right.
I had no desire to do an apprenticeship and go on and coach the New Zealand team. It just happened. So I did the New Zealand juniors from 80 to 83. That's 4 years. And then they came to do that tour to America. And Peter Schmidt actually said, would you come along as the manager? Not just for that trip, but for anything else. Oh, that's right, 84, yeah. It was a bit complicated because we went to Malaysia in 84.
Right.
Well, with a it was a team that was nowhere near as strong as the one that went to the States. We went to Malaysia without Stan Hill, without Peter Logan. We got Rui Manahi in the States. So, yeah, we had a very undermanned team in Malaysia. And I was the assistant coach there and the manager. And then went to the States. And then either the next year or the year after, the next year I think it was, 85, Peter Schmidt went to America. He got a job at a high school. Okay. Which was his ambition. He already had the American accent. And he's never come back. Right. He stayed over there. So Bob Bishop became the coach. And so I just stuck around as assistant coach. So it's all sort of happened a bit by accident. People recognizing you as what you had done as a coach and approached you that way. I don't know. You get to know people, don't you? You can work with them, whatever. But assistant coaching was pretty new in those days. It only became part of New Zealand teams in the 80s.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Prior to that, I don't think you'll find any junior teams or women's teams had any assistant coaches. Yeah.
And were you a superstitious coach? Did you have certain things, if it was like a certain clipboard or certain pre-game meal, I don't know, just anything at all? Did you have anything like that, as a coach?
No.
Sorry.
No superstitions, no.
There's another question that I just love to ask coaches. It's an interesting one. Some people are quite superstitious.
Yeah, they are. No, I never had anything. We had some routines. I mean, when you're playing in the National League and you're Canterbury, you generally had to stay overnight and fly up one day and back the night after.
Yeah.
So Bert and I, after we'd had the shoot around and the pre-game meal and that, we'd try and go for a bit of a walk just to talk about things, rather than sit in wherever we were.
Yeah.
But the only thing we ever did was go for a bit of a walk, and if we passed the dairy, we might buy a couple of Mars bars. That was about our own.
Did you have any of your players that had any really strange or weird superstitions that you were?
Not that I was aware of. Some of them might have. They might have put the left sock on first or something like that.
Yeah.
But I was never really aware of it. Mm-hmm. The Kiwis are pretty basic. Not most sports people are, I think. But no, there's nothing like that. I remember coming up away with the, might have been on one of those really tough trips to Australia where you just assemble and fly over. And you got to remember the Australian team through the 90s and late 80s was pretty awesome.
Yeah.
And after the 2000 Olympics, 10 or 11 of them retired from international basketball. But you had the legends, Longley, Vlahoff, Andrew Gaze was a nemesis. He's a lovely guy, wonderful person.
Yeah. But
he's been on the other side of the court all the way from 1982 when I was with the juniors to 2000.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So when we met at the Commonwealth Games in 2006 in Melbourne and I was sitting in the stand, he suddenly wandered up. He said, "What are you doing here, coach?" I said, "I'm actually with the England teams here." He had his daughters with him. I introduced him to my family and said, "You don't really want to know this guy. He's my..." But, they were, and I remember playing Australia, it was around 88, 89, and I remember Andy Bennett sort of came out of half retirement. Maybe he was in that 89 team, actually. He had to captain New Zealand, and he had to mark Luke Longley. And Andy was 6'8" at the maximum.
Right.
7'2". Boy from Gore. And I just remember looking on the court at the opening tip, and it was just you just looked at it, and it was a total mismatch.
Right.
Pete Pokai before the game saying, "Hey fellas, they're just like us. They put their shorts on one leg at a time." Or their socks or whatever it was. But, that was Pete's attitude.
Yeah.
He would take on anybody, anywhere, anytime. He was great. He's a legend of New Zealand basketball. He's the guy who should be recognised more. Yeah.
Sorry, what was it named? My
Peter Pokai.
Peter Pokai. I believe, I just remember when I was younger hearing his name a lot.
Yeah. He nearly always fronted up. A lot of players who weren't able to front up or didn't front up or whatever, Pete always.
Just one name that you've mentioned quite a few times, and so has everybody that I've spoken to that was a successful basketball person in that era. The name Glenn Denham keeps on popping up time and time, and I'm aware of who he played for, but what was it about Glenn Denham for anybody that didn't get a chance to see him play, but is listening to a lot of these chats that I'm having? What was it about Glenn Denham that made him such a special player? When
he was at high school, he was pretty well a man amongst boys. He was at King's High School in Dunedin. Glenn Denham and Mark Hinton went to the same school. So I encountered him in 1980, 81, fact, I even had the misfortune to play against him. I think he came up with a team from Otago and I was playing for Timaru. From then on, he gave me a hard time about what I was wearing.
Can you elaborate on what you were wearing, Coach?
No. It wasn't a ponytail. Anyway, so at high school level, he was dominant. So at junior level, he was dominant. So he was in the junior team, the New Zealand junior team, for at least 2 years, and captain. And then he became in the Tall Blacks. He went away to the World Champs in 1986 and progressed. He's got great leadership skills, progressed to become the captain. So he played right the way through. And it would have been nice, but he really was, he was getting on a bit. So there were a couple of players that couldn't carry through to the Olympics, but no, he was around that whole time.
Yeah.
And he was a bit of a, he was not only a big name, but he was a very good public speaker.
Right.
So he was making a name for himself as a public speaker. He might have been on the radio in Otago. He played for Canterbury for 2 or 3 years when Ubic sponsored the team. They employed him. And he was a leadership figure there and was in 1 or 2 of the title-winning teams at least, I think. But no, and now he's a headmaster of a school in Auckland. And he went to England and made a name for himself there at schools for underprivileged kids.
Okay. Oh, wow.
He's making a name for himself at Massey High School in Auckland. So during the lockdown, for instance, he was on TV a couple of times.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Speaks very well, very powerfully. Very powerful speaker. Can be overly dramatic, but in a positive, always in a positive way.
Right. Very passionate.
Yeah, and that's what comes through, and that's the way he played.
Right.
Played passion. Yeah. Yeah. No, he's definitely.
I just heard his name mentioned just time and time again throughout. Just my time in playing, coaching, involved in basketball. What are your plans for where you're going to be? Are you based in New Zealand this year?
I'm here until Emirates start flying back to New Zealand. My return flight's booked on Emirates.
Okay.
So when they say we're flying to Auckland, well, even if they were to say we're flying to Melbourne, my family's in Melbourne, my son and my daughter, I can stay with them. They would want to see me. I could, and if New Zealand opens the borders up, but really what I'd prefer to do is just go on the flight that I'm booked on, which they will have to honour.
Yeah.
If I was to ring them up and say I'm going to fly on one of these other horrible flights that's packed, one of these charter ones or whatever, and go to Los Angeles, and I would lose 50% of the fare, and
yeah,
I don't really want to go back over there at the moment. Anyway, it's pretty scary.
Yes.
The town I live in North Wales, Wrexham, and I can't even believe the figures on the local hospital board, but the number of new cases in Wrexham yesterday was 35.
Oh, I see. Okay.
One town.
Wow.
The day before was 11. The day before that was 11. The thing that makes me suspicious is the numbers vary. They had 3 a few days ago.
Yeah.
From 3 to 35 and down to 3 again. But
yeah.
there was a place in North Wales, it took them about a month before they even disclosed any deaths. They went from 0 to 84 in one day.
It's strange times, isn't it? It's just such strange times.
Yeah. But, I mean, Wrexham's only a town the size of Napier and Hastings.
Okay.
Wow. So to have 400 cases there, it's a bit scary, isn't it? 175,000 people in the town.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a lot of cases for that.
Yeah. Oh, well, hopefully that picture just continues to improve in the upcoming month or 2, 3. It's you're in a good spot at the moment though, so that's positive. So
Yeah, you can't miss with a lot of the Canterbury Rams because you've got some really good people.
Yeah.
And, Ian Webb, Gilbert Gordon. I don't know if Gilbert still lives there or whether he's gone to Sydney. Terry Brunel. Bert would know them too. Bert or Batchison.
Yeah.
I don't even know where some of them are these days. Some of the players that we had. Graham Timms, I think, still in the States. Although I did hear he came back at one stage. Somebody in Ashburton told me he'd come back for a while.
Okay.
But they're worth following up and talking to because most of them are just good people.
Excellent.
Played for the Tall Blacks too. Gilbert Gordon, Ian Webb, Graham Timms. Oh, I'll tell you another one that was around that era. It was Tony Romano, who made a name for himself in Italy in business. I think he was head of the Luna Rossa America's Cup thing. He played for the Rams in the early 90s. I think you might
remember that name. Yeah.
Yeah. We'll talk again, Jonathan.
Oh, look, I really...
Are you Jonathan or John?
You can call me Joe.
Okay.
Yeah, I know. No Jonathans refer to themselves as Joe apart from me, so just one of those guys, I guess. But I really appreciate your time. It's been so great chatting with you and meeting you this way. And I just appreciate you giving your time for this. And I'd love to chat again. That'd be great.
Well, remember, I'll come out I might be back in Christchurch if I get sick of travelling around the North Island or I don't go to. But, like after the tournament, if Emirates still aren't flying, I'm not sure what the hell I'll do. So.
Yeah. Hey, if you need a hand with anything at all, just let me know.
Well, you can come and get 3 boxes of stuff for the Canterbury Rams out of my carry them down.
Hey, whatever you need, I can make it happen.
Okay.
Good on you.
Is that a promise?
Hey?
Is that a promise?
Hey, if you need me to come collect some boxes, I can do that. I've got some time.
Okay. Look, good luck with your coaching.
Hey, thank you very much, Keith. I really appreciate that, and great to meet you.
And we might see you on the bench. We'll come and have a look at you one day.
Oh, good on you. I appreciate that.
I'll see if you've got any of those nasty habits of pulling up.
No, I respect the basketball gods. I don't mess with them.
Okay, good man. You can't.
Okay, thanks, Keith. Have a great day.
Okay.
Cheers. Bye now.
Nice meeting you, Jonathan. Bye.
Nice meeting you.